It's just another way to make your stuff, and it helps you to perform in a different way, no? To find different structures, because your brain is thinking differently.
Weird. So I was kind of aware of live coding for like a really long time, from like 2007 more or less, but I never did it because I was always like, I can't do live coding, I'm not a good enough coder, like I just don't, like I sort of had this vision of live coders as like super virtuosic.
Before we were more experimenting with controllers, like Wiimotes were a big thing back then, to like just use these Nintendo game controllers to control some sounds. We really loved this like simplicity of being the computer music performer just with the laptop, without any additional MIDI controller and gadgets and everything. Like we had the feeling it is like how computer music should actually also be, a bit like really getting down to the core of what makes a computer, like expressing, writing algorithms or expressing process as code. And yeah, we wanted to experiment with that, and we wanted to see also how far we could push it in a sense.
Well, to me, like, you know, thinking about like how can the laptop be considered an instrument? Because of course, like if you try to study in a conservatory of music, you will always be asked like, okay, what's your musical background? What do you play? And if you say like, I play the laptop, no one will understand that. And you know, the way electronic music has evolved, so if you just think of the laptop, you will have like music software to play with, and sometimes you have interfaces to control the software. But to me, with live coding, it was really the way to actually use the laptop without any peripherals to, you know, convert it or be used as an instrument.
To me, an important part is showing your process. So, and other people might disagree with this, I think, but for me, showing your process and sharing your process with other people is a very core part of it. And so that's why I think I sometimes find community with people working with modular synths or something, because of the kind of like showing your process live to other people. And I think that affects not just how a live performance happens, but also this sort of community building of teaching other people and sharing what you're doing with other people.
And live coding, I think it's about trying new things, trying new possibilities. And of course, if you do that, it might crash at some point. Because this is a machine, because this is experimental, because this is new and it's great, and it's just, well, let's put it back, no? Let's recover from the crash. So no, it's not only the crash, it's like how you recover from the crash.
When we share the code in live coding, we are not just sharing some texts and stuff, but we are also sharing our thoughts in a way. So I'm sharing more than us than in other practices maybe. So I think when we share that much, we create this community and this way to do things and to think about things also. So I think that's the main thing with the live coding.
Was because the live coding community cared about diversity, we ended up on like every lineup in the UK for a while, and we were just like, we do not have time to be on every lineup. Like, we need more women to like support a like diverse scene. And so I guess, yeah, that's one aspect of time. But yeah, no, it can be really hard, I think, to deal with those issues. But I guess like on the money front, like almost, I mean, all live coding software is open source. I think like the live coding community kind of evolved out of like ideas around open source software and transparency and making things free and open. So yeah, that's all sort of been inherited from open source aesthetic essentially and brought into the scene.
Things shifted also much more into like the community aspects, and that it is more about doing it and sharing the knowledge and the joy of live coding with each other.
So we thought like we just need to start coming together, and start sharing our ideas and become more of a community than just independent artists that sometimes get together and you go like, oh, where do you live? In the Netherlands. Oh, really? Me too.
For me, since I started doing, getting involved with live coding, I've been really impressed with, for example, some of the ideas about not having sort of hierarchies or headliners in events and welcoming newcomers. And so it's something I've been interested in kind of perpetuating as well, of creating. I really like Alex McLean has always organized kind of live streams where anyone can there's a big Google Doc and you can just sign up at which half hour you want to perform, and if there's 100 people participating, then it lasts 100 hours, or if
there's an way or an effort or an idea of the community of trying to incorporate failure, especially in a society in which failure is something that cannot happen.
Everything started with the idea to start connecting the nodes of Top Lab around Europe. So they came to Hangar with the idea of actually internationalizing their projects, let's say. So from there, the collaborative project started and Onthefly was born, let's say. Like during this year, they really managed to create a community of people that actually not only practice, but sometimes they're also simply interested in seeing, so like the performance.
When we were preparing for the start of this of the Onthefly project, we were kind of bootstrapping this community, live coding community. It was pretty much non-existent in Ljubljana. There wasn't much of a scene. So we would just basically get together regularly and look at one program or one environment together. And it wasn't like a teacher and pupils, but like a bunch of us. None of us had really a good knowledge of a tool, looking together at it, and it made it, I think, much more relaxed and flowing in this sense.
With Iván, you're going to interview him tomorrow. We started actually the idea of making the Onthefly project with him. So it was like a wish list about live coding, how we as performers we wanted to know more about live coding and have like a more intense exchanges between the communities and something like that. So we started to think about how to do that, and then we want to make some research and have the time and the money to put the people that have these amazing ideas and they will have all the time to do that and stuff. And also we want to get some public, actually, no? Like We don't want to be just like a few nerds doing stuff, but we want to share our things also.
Yeah, so basically, yeah, it was the idea to bring to another level like the notes and make the live coding more visible also to a broader audience, let's say.
Now we have the chance to bring even the youngest people in contact with coding. And our point is that basically coding is media literacy for the 21st century. So we actually believe that if people would like to make a bigger impact in the future, they actually need to learn how to code and how to program, because otherwise their roles might actually be reduced to mere consumerism.
There are all these systems, algorithmic systems, timelines that we are using every day. And on school, you learn maybe once how to build something with wood or maybe do some math, but you're not, well, of course, back when I was at school, you're not getting taught how to make an algorithm. And when they do get taught to make an algorithm, it's often with the goal of making something functional instead of making something playful. And so creative coding or live coding, the goal is not to make something functional, it's to make something expressive and to play around with it.
Live coding is, first of all, instantaneous. It comes to life in the moment. And this basically means that all kinds of things can actually go wrong. And this is what I personally embrace, because I think that also great creative potentials can actually derive from those very small failures and things which potentially go wrong. And this is what I really appreciate.
And well, I also find that basically not just live coding, but in general, coding sound and visuals is a very good way to teach coding. Because again, there is not like doing some math or some other problem. There's the code can work correctly or incorrectly. And here, it's correct if you like what comes out, and it's incorrect if you don't.
The tools have evolved. I mean, back in 2007, we were using like Super Collider with Ljubljana and all, who was JITLib to do everything. So there was not, or like what is now known as tidal cycles, was still like very much a prototype in Alex McLean's like hard drive, I guess. I don't know for sure if it was like in what state it was, but it was not the tool that it is now that is like really like this go-to live coding platform. We used Super Collider, which is of course very focused on sound synthesis, not so much focusing on like playing events or like defining patterns as tidal cycles is. And so yeah, we were like on the one hand we were really like free, and we wanted to also be really free, like doing this free improvisation noise, but then we were also interested in doing like the opposite, because live coding at that point was very much this very free experimental like sound collages that were happening, or very conceptual. But then we were also trying to do, hey, can we like have a shared harmonic progression, or let's do some beats, can we do that also? And then of course like something like tidal cycles is now very much better, much more approachable for this tool, but we had then to find our own solutions to do it, which is also interesting, and probably changes also the result in the end, because tools are always changing the output, or tools are always very much informing even how you think about the process or the problem or the result that you actually want to achieve.
When I started live coding, I was very much I'd spent some time at a department that was very electroacoustically focused, doing my master's, and I guess that was kind of like my electronic music world, and I was very interested in experimental music and noise music, essentially. And then when I started live coding, I got into this phase where I was just like testing out live coding in like loads of different contexts. So I was like live coding at noise shows, live coding with jazz musicians, like playing algorithms, and I was just like really interested in how you can kind of morph the forms through code, like across all those different contexts. So yeah, algorithm for me was like, hey, how do I turn noise music into something that people want to dance to? So there was this like experimentation across a lot of algorithms with like, yeah, I guess going from this like very experimental noise aesthetic to, you know, like quantizing that, and then like how do you actually get people to dance to that, and like what adjustments do you need to make? So yeah, I really enjoyed that process actually. But
clap your hands, you know, or where do people come from? Say the country you come from, and then, you know, you can start extending the sound output of what you do, because the textual instructions that you type on the computer don't necessarily have to affect the computer or be interpreted by the computer, can be interpreted by anyone reading. So you can use that idea to really extend the output, the sonic output, or even the conceptual output of live coding. But like with this specific project, the Code Clavier, like I really take my hands off, and it's all up to Anne. So, you know, she's deciding what she's coding, she's deciding the algorithm, and the way she's playing, it's also modifying the algorithm.
At the beginning, I like to write just maybe a line or something that starts the thing, and then there's not just this annoying silence for a few minutes that sometimes happens in a performance in live coding. So I like to solve that thing first, and then I depend on the performance, and also I think it helps me to think, because I want to think or remember a function or something like I want to run, but I have something to move, so it helps me. So I used to perform with my guitar, and I have another project just using all this and modular synthesizers and stuff. So I like to use those things also when I perform with live coding.
Also, like, I mean, Iván and me just wrote a paper on live coding and machine learning, and we were like specifically like picking out that there's like such a different ethos in those two technical spheres, which makes it really tricky to combine them. But then maybe there's something interesting in those frictions, like, you know, if you're gonna like live train a model, what does your model have to look like? How do you have to adjust the machine learning technology to fit within the live coding frame? And if you want to like take the like full transparency live coding ethos, yet you're working with black boxes. Like, yeah, it's just really tricky. And we ended up with a lot of questions and not very many answers yet. So yeah, I think it's definitely like a really interesting area of research right now. It's like, what does live machine learning look like?
AI or machine learning can offer to live coding, and also the other way around, because if you look at the practice, within live coding practice with specific requirements, necessities, ways of doing, that also influences, for example, the development of algorithms oriented to small data, oriented, for example, to be more, to have parameters that allowed you actually to be more expressive.
And then more specifically with Hydra, I really do work with this idea as functional programming, as representing a set of pieces of code or modules that can be put together in different ways. And so I find them to be very related in terms of that you're kind of representing how an audio or a visual signal flows through a system. You can live patch things together, and it's sort of this ongoing process where there's not like it doesn't work or it doesn't work. It kind of makes something that you're interested in expressing, or it makes something that you're not interested in expressing.
And the from scratch sessions, they are something rather unique in the field of live coding, as for my opinion. Basically staring in front of a complete empty tableau and then letting the creative spirits actually act.
This feeling of always coming on stage with this like fresh feeling of like, this could go horribly wrong. But I mean, that's also because of the way that I live code, because I almost always start blank slate, so without any code written. And it's a free improvisation from there. And so there's all like the possibility space is large and the possibility to fail is quite large. But I really enjoy that way of live coding.
Probably live coding is more, I think you could say that you interface with the computer. Before I used to think you have to use text, but not anymore, you know? And you are having like an output that's mostly artistic, and the importance is more in the process, like how you're making it, than the end result.
And I also see how Algorave has kind of changed the scene in a lot of ways as well, because when you go into a dance music context, it's very different to an experimental music context, and people expect to dance at least on some level. Like even if they know it's a live coding show and some things can go wrong, you still expect dance music. And so I kind of see how over the 10 years, like production values have got a bit better in live coding, and I would largely put that down to Algorave and also people who are coming in maybe from more dance music backgrounds as well and bringing that aesthetic in. So yeah, I feel like there's actually getting less space to fail in live coding rather than more. But yeah, maybe that's interesting as well.
And in, let's say, technical stuff, coding, artistic practice, like everything, trying things that don't work is part of the research process, of every research process, but it's not reported. So I think, or I feel that that failure is what can actually be presented without any troubles within the live coding practice, and it's something that is, I don't know, also liberating.
But live coding, I mean, what is live coding? I mean, live coding can be so many things. And I think that the interesting part is we don't know yet where the actual boundaries are.